Hello and welcome to this Fane live event. My name's Andrew Cotter, and I suppose if you're watching this, you're a lover of dogs. I am as well. Some of you may know that I have two very pampered dogs, one of whom is at my feet scratching herself. Actually, no, cleaning herself, so I'm not going to look at that anymore. But we're here to talk about dogs, to talk about a man who has saved dogs and saved himself. Hope that's not too dramatic along the way. Please welcome Niall Harbison. Niall, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm just waiting for your dog to pop back in because I just love dogs. Not that I don't
No,
prefer to look at you, but I do love looking at any type of dog.
listen, I'm quite happy to just look at dogs all day. I don't like appearing in vision, but well, one is at my feet, and the other one will appear, I'm sure, through that door at some point during this, because she'll think I'm alone. How's that happened? I've got to be with my friend. And also with my human. So she'll appear. Anyway, Niall, we're here not to talk about me or my dogs, but you. And I think a lot of you will know if you're watching this about Niall's book, Hope, which is out in paperback now. Um, and your story as well, because following you on social media, online, it's incredible. And we'll come to the work you do in Thailand and everything in your life at the moment. Actually, where are you at the moment? You're not in Thailand at the moment.
No, I'm actually in New York where I'm over here hiring a couple of staff who are going to help build out the charity, and we're also met some architects who offered to design a hospital for us for free. So
Wow.
mainly I'm hanging around dog parks like a dog creep. There's great dogs in New York. They're really, I don't know, stylish or something. I just like sitting in the parks watching them.
Yeah, but it's big city dogs though. So you've seen it's like when you go to Paris, and I think smaller dogs are the dogs of choice in big city. Designer dogs, Paris, New York, chic cities.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're compared to the dogs that I deal with on a daily basis, I feel like going up and telling them like, listen, you're very spoiled here. You're count your lucky blessings because they have there's some of them even walking around with little booties on them to keep their paws clean, I think.
No, come on. No, I would have a word with their owners. That's I get asked that a lot about, especially because I put videos out of my dogs in the snow in the mountains and say, where are their boots? And you have to explain to them about dogs' paws and exactly how they work and how dogs are not humans. Anyway, Niall, everybody knows you for your work in Thailand, and again, I'll talk about the journey and how you got there, but just going back further because the book Hope is so much about the dogs and what you do rescuing street dogs in Thailand, but it's a sort of biography of sorts as well because it's the points that lead you to the life you have now. And I think the sort of key message of the book is, you save dogs, but they've kind of saved you as well. And so to take us back, you are Northern Irish, but you had a sort of a drifting childhood. Can you just explain a little bit about where you grew up?
Yeah, I actually grew up in Belgium. I think my dad got a job in Belgium around 1979 when I was born, and it was the height of the troubles in Northern Ireland, which was a horrific time. So I think he just jumped at the opportunity to get a young family out of Northern Ireland because it wasn't a particularly fun place to be. And so I grew up in Belgium, yeah, which is quite a boring place, if I'm quite honest.
We've just lost
Not
our
the
Belgian viewers. Niall,
yeah, yeah.
it's a
No,
great
it's a
place.
lovely
I,
place to
I
grow,
love it.
lovely place to grow up, and there's lots of things, but yes, not not like a crazy nightlife or anything like that, but a very nice civil upbringing that I had there. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you went through what I suppose lots of children do go through in terms of parents separating, and that seems to, when you think about the person you became for a while, it was you trace it back to that event, which is traumatic for any sort of child to experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have trauma. Well, most of us have some sort of trauma when we're growing up, and it really affects us. But yeah, my parents were separated when I was about 13, and then my mum went off with another guy who ended up, beating the crap out of her, to put it simply. And I kind of saw a lot of that. So it's not very nice seeing your mum getting beaten up and having injuries and stuff like that. So I think I was only about 13 at that stage. So it's always played in my mind, like, should I have jumped in, or I'm a guy, should I have done more? But also just still a child, so it was kind of just hard to process. So I kind of just hid and maybe um, started drinking, started smoking, started, running away from the problem. So yeah, I mean, traumatic, yeah. I think everybody downplays their own trauma, but I guess, yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the point where you end up where you are now. I say you're in New York just now, but basically you're based in Thailand. And the journey to get there is a journey of trying to find yourself in terms of career and well, first of all, you went to catering college, didn't you? So every time I see you cooking meals for your dog or preparing meals for the street dogs now, I think there's a guy who knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I was so terrible in school because of what was going on at home, and I failed the same year 3 times, and I got kicked out of 2 different schools. I think I would have like ADHD, or I would be properly diagnosed probably now, but back then I was just sort of seen as troublemaker and thick, I guess. So I got to 17 with nothing, and my dad had obviously seen me hanging around the kitchen or something, and he was like, "Look, why don't you try to get a trade and go and be a chef?" Which was smart, because I did that and I loved it straight away. It was everything that school wasn't. It was, running around hot kitchens and people swearing at you and exciting, and you could go and drink in the evenings. And it was just a wonderful world. So yeah, I became a chef, and it's a great job chefing, to sort of travel the world. And I went to, do a ski season and travel to Australia to work. I just embraced the life of being a chef. Yeah.
Yeah, you've gone global before I wanted to get global because let's go to Dublin, Manchester, working places like that, grafting away. But the interesting thing for me is that, now when you have such, I don't want to say success online, but such a profile online, is that you're quite a sort of early adopter of the online world, but in a different aspect because of your catering, you're trying to create something there.
Yeah, I think I was working on yachts, which is, that's where I ended up, which are private yachts, and I had an awful lot of time on my hands because you only have to cook for 1 or 2 guests, very rich guests. And so I had a lot of time to sort of just sit on the internet in about 2005, 2006. And I mean, by a lot of time, I mean like days at a time when there's no guests there, and you've nowhere to go. So I just started playing around with YouTube and Facebook, and the very, very early days. And I was just like, wow, this is kind of unbelievable that you can make a video. I made a video of myself cooking a steak because, again, totally bored. I was like, why don't I show people how to cook a steak? And I just put it on YouTube, and it kind of blew up really quickly. But yeah, that was early days of social media.
Yeah, actually, I'm just wondering if some of the tech inspiration of a certain yacht owner rubbed off on you. I saw Paul Allen, who's the sort of co-founder of Microsoft. I mean, that must have been an extraordinary world to be, a world that we don't have access to, but suddenly you're sort of on the very edge of it on his extraordinary yacht.
Yeah, I worked for him, and I think he was worth about 37 billion at the time, which is,
Hmm,
quite a lot.
reasonable.
But I don't think you realize how rich these people are. You might read something in the paper or see their cars or private jets or whatever, but I mean, if he was just to burn money off the back of his yacht and throw it away, like, he couldn't burn it quicker than, like, it's an insane amount of money. It's like he had a basketball court on the yacht. He had a submarine, because he obviously needed a submarine. I mean, he didn't have one helicopter, he had 2 helicopters. So, oh, there's
Yes, Mabel.
Mabel. Yeah.
Mabel, yeah.
Um,
All right, hello.
and very important guest. Um, and yeah, so just an insane amount of wealth. And, like, you would order food, and it was for, maybe 2 people, but I would have to order £1,000 worth or sorry, £100,000 worth of food, just so you would have everything. You'd have, you know, mozzarella flowing in from Italy, or tuna coming from Japan. Money just wasn't an object. So yeah, really a real eye opener, but maybe not in a very, good way, to be honest. I
Mm.
mean, it shows that the interesting when you're young to see that, but I mean, it's kind of a crazy world.
Yeah, and the success that you had when you were setting up your own business back in Dublin and Manchester, it's clear that that success didn't leave you fulfilled. In fact, it created a lot of stress for you.
Yeah, I think probably running any business, even if you're running a corner shop or a big multinational, it's stressful. But I'd kind of been a functioning alcoholic through all this stage. I think when you're in your 20s, I think everybody kind of drinks. Well, maybe not everybody, but certainly when I was growing up, pub culture was huge, and I kind of got away with being an alcoholic in my 20s because everybody was at it, and then
Yeah.
people started settling down and stuff, and I was still drinking, and then it sort of spilled into Monday mornings. I'd still be drinking, and then I'd be drinking 7 days a week. So yeah, I found the business side of the thing very stressful because I'm actually very introverted, believe it or not. Says me like writing a book and doing an interview, but I love my own company, and um I just really struggled, being around so many people and being responsible for people and having so many meetings. And I just turned to the bottle, to be honest. So I was able to function through building those businesses, but not maybe enjoy it.
Yeah, we'll come to your first dog in a minute because it strikes me when talking to you and listening to you talk about being quite introverted, not necessarily a people person, is that you would have been a natural fit for having a dog, but you didn't have a dog when you were a child.
Yeah, it was my dad was very just against it, and he just sort of put the block on it. And now, luckily, I have two half brothers now, and they've convinced them. So they were better at convincing. So they've got a dog, which I helped sway that argument. But no, I never had one growing up. And then once I sold business, I was about 32, and I'd always had little apartments and stuff, so it wasn't right. But I was able to buy a house, and that's when I got my first dog, Snoop, in Dublin, and it was probably the best day of my life. It was, I always say it was. I think I got him from like the DSPCA, which is the same as you would have in England, and I think he was €70, £50 at the time. And it was the best £50 I ever
Mm.
spent in my life. It was just transformative getting my own dog. It was like selling, everybody was like, oh, you've sold a business and you've sold, being in maybe a magazine feature or whatever. Like none of that mattered compared to having a dog. Like that was my actual life stream.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking to a man who's saved thousands of dogs over in Thailand now, just the very fact that your first dog was a rescue dog as well speaks volumes. Again, I've got two very pampered dogs who are not rescue dogs, but I can't, advocate that strongly enough. It really is just or must be such a rewarding thing to do. My mother saved lots of dogs, so well, Snoop was your first. Actually, there's another thing about it that I can sort of empathise with because when you're struggling coping with depression and anxiety, and actually just being able to go for a run with Snoop. Now, not everybody does that with their dogs, but I can testify that it is just the most glorious feeling. Is that what it was for you, just getting out there?
100%. I used to run 10K with Snoop all the time, and he would run maybe 15K because he would be chasing squirrels in between. So he had a much better stamina than me. But yeah, it's just the fact of putting one foot in front of the other. If you are struggling, there's times where I would have been hiding under the covers or, you know, just not able to get out of bed really. And then to to have him as he's a dog can really get you over that dark place. Now sometimes even Snoop couldn't. I'd have to sort of, lay in bed and have him beside me, which he would happily do as well. But yeah, I must have walked every square inch of Dublin mountains and around Manchester and all the lovely parks, like with Snoop, sort of just taking deep breaths and telling myself everything's going to be okay, and just getting through the fog, really.
Yeah, no, I know that feeling. How did you come to be in Thailand then? I mean, again, if you spend a lot of time in Dublin or near Manchester, where I'm not too far from there, or it's like growing up in Scotland, eventually the weather will will say, well, why don't you just go and try something else? Was that pretty much what it was for you?
It genuinely was. I mean, there was a few reasons. Like I'd been to Thailand a couple of times on holidays, and people have a misguided. I mean, there's party scene there for sure, and madness. But I used to love it because really cheap, standard of living. You can eat for £1. You can have a great meal. The weather was fantastic, and the people unbelievably friendly. And it also, when you're around Dublin and Manchester and places like that, I just found when the weather got bad, those months in like January or even leading up to Christmas, there's always an excuse to drink. Like you're very close to just saying, feck this, things are just too dark, too grim, too miserable. I'm just gonna hang it right here and go in and have a few pints. And it's not like that in Thailand for me personally. It's you're outside, the sun is shining, there's a beach, there's jungles to walk in, there's so I really just changed for lifestyle, and weather was genuinely, I would say, 90%. I still remember I was with Snoop in a park in Manchester in Charlton, And it was one of those icy mornings, and I was kind of late for work. I had to be in a meeting or something at 8 o'clock, and I was walking Snoop, and I put like it was icy, and I put my foot on a what I thought was ice, but it wasn't. It was a puddle that just had a bit of ice, and then my foot went all the way through, and I was just soaked and freezing. And I think in that exact moment, I was walking home, and I was like, "No, I just cannot do this anymore. I have to get out of here."
Yeah, but your sort of your salvation was not instant in Thailand. You were out there, and you talk about the time around Christmas and New Year, which I think is a difficult time for a lot of people. And again, there's the sort of enforced jollity of it and the drinking. But you spent pretty much the time between, was this 2020, between Christmas and New Year in hospital? I mean, how did that come about? Because that was really the turning point for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a combination. Like, look, I'd been on as many benders as you could count, and I was a functional alcoholic, but this was a particularly bad one. It was a combination of I broke up with a girlfriend who'd come with me there. I had stopped working. I'd sort of sold a business, so I had nothing to do. COVID had hit, which was, I think everybody, hit the bottle at that stage and was a turbulent time in life, couldn't go anywhere. So it was a whole bunch of things came together. The girlfriend left. So I'm on my own in Thailand, and I just went downhill really fast. I was like, started drinking at midday. Then I was like, I had nothing to do. So eventually it got to the stage where it was 10 a.m. I was drinking. And then like once you're drinking at 10 a.m., there's not a big difference between 8 a.m. And then suddenly I was drinking, 3, 4 bottles of wine a day. I was taking 6 or 7 Valiums just to kind of stay on an even keel of some sort. And it just slipped. And yeah, eventually it got worse and worse. This bender lasted about 2 months, and I ended up in hospital. I just called my friend there, hardest call ever. I was like, look, you need to come and get me. I think I'm about to die.
Was this the German guy, Moritz?
Yeah, Moritz, yeah, and I mean, I say friendly. It was friends for about a year only at that stage, but he dropped everything and came and got me and checked me into hospital, and I was just wired up to everything. And yeah, I mean, I was trying to drink myself to death, to be honest. It wasn't that I was like, I mean, I think it is probably suicidal, but if I wouldn't have never like taken a gun out or whatever way you want to commit suicide. But if I just could have drank so much that I didn't wake up the next morning, I would have been happy. And that's what I was trying to do. I was just like, just keep drinking, and then this will end. And it nearly did, but I got into hospital, and they were
Yeah.
very good.
The reason I like to mention the name of Moritz, and because there are, what shines through in the book is that there are good people in the world. Because I know you say you're not a people person, I'm not a people person. I think you've got a slightly more positive attitude towards people than I do. But the dogs save you. But um, throughout your subsequent career in Thailand, you've met lots of good people as well.
Yeah, I mean, really good people that's save dogs. And it's not like that I don't like people. I do really like some people, but I just find it hard work. Being if I'm sitting in a even a dinner with 3 other people, I'm like, Jesus, the small talk, and like I just find it very, very hard. Whereas I
Yeah.
could talk to a dog all day. But yeah, the people look, I'm trying to save dogs around the world too, and I don't want to end up as the crazy dog guy who, you know, has 10 dogs and just saves 10 dogs. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you need a big team and a lot of people to help you. So that's the part that everybody has a part of their job or their life that they don't like as much. I'd love to be just driving around saving the dogs, but I have wonderful people helping me out as well.
All right, so let's get to how it started then, really, because when you were in Thailand initially, you couldn't help but notice the number of stray dogs around. And again, a little bit like me, I couldn't walk past a stray dog without offering it. So I remember being out at Doha in the World Athletics Championships and seeing all these stray cats and kittens, finding some young kittens who had just been born or not long, and they're so close to the road here and they look so stick thin and bone. So I'm going to the shop and buying cat food for them and just pouring it onto the flower beds next to this main road. And the local people would be going, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But I couldn't, I can't, yes, I couldn't stop doing that. And if I were in your situation, I think I would find was it quite difficult in a way, and you just thought, I have to do something.
Well, I started when I was drunk. I used to just sort of, I'd be stopping off to get, a 6 pack to finish off the night, but then I'd be sort of like half sprawled on the floor, handing them like that, exactly, a little bag of food, sort of, bringing them out bits of fried chicken and stuff. But I wasn't reliable in those days. That was, once a week or something. I would do that if I was drunk. But as soon as I sobered up, I was kind of, I had no meaning in life, and then I had no great plan to help dogs. But I was going to play football. I was kind of on a health buzz, and then I just saw one dog called Lucky, and she looked exactly like you said. She just looked really stick thin, and she was on her own. So I was playing football, and then I stopped in at the 7-Eleven on the way back, and I was like, I'll go and see if she's still there. And I fed her. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, well, I can't just feed her what, like she's going to be, what's she going to do today? So I went back and she was the first one. And then quickly I realized that, I had a bit of food left over. So I found another two a bit further down, and then it grew to four and then eight. And then I got a bigger bag. And then before I knew it, I sort of had a 25 kg bag on the moped, and I was feeding 50 every day. So it was very organic at the start.
But the trouble is, as you say, when you feed one, then you think about, well, I saw three others there as well. So it's kind of like once you're in properly, and then it's how do I make this into, because you had a little bit of disposable income at the time, but that can't last. So what do you do from there?
Yeah, well, also feeding is actually, I thought it was the be all and end all at the start, but it's actually probably the least important, being honest, if in terms of fixing the problem. Dogs are very good at rummaging through the rubbish, or, people will give them scraps and stuff. So what they really needed was medical care and sterilization, which is neutering or spaying the dog. But this, I didn't know that on day one. So I was very much focused on the feeding at the start, and it wasn't that expensive. It was only about, 30, say £20 a day, got me a big bag of food. And for a few months I just did that. And it was so rewarding because, as an alcoholic, you're very unreliable, you're very selfish, you're very, you just think about the next drink. So I was used to sort of 20 years of letting people down and not being available. But when you show up with the food and the dogs are wagging their tails and happy to see you, I was sober and it felt really nice. I was like, God, these dogs really rely on me now, and I'm showing up, which was a good start in life.
Yeah, and from reading the book, it seems to be that the reason it makes you feel good is because you don't, for much of your life, you didn't have much of a feeling of your own self-worth. You didn't feel particularly, I don't know, proud of yourself. But here you're doing something which gives you that instant feeling of, no, I'm doing something small here, but it's helping.
It is, and do you know what? I was actually walking down the street in New York yesterday, and there was a guy. He was carrying a big piece of wood, and he was just struggling to get in a door. And everybody's ignoring him, and I walked over and I just helped open the door for him, and he went in. No big deal, but he was like so thankful. And then I was walking away, and I was thinking about everything, and I was like, it's actually a really kind of selfish thing to help other people. Like, not
Oh
selfish,
yeah.
but it's like I was walking down the road feeling so good about myself for doing a tiny thing. So it gives you, I don't know, some sort of, maybe being addicted, it gives you some sort of dopamine hit or something. Like helping the dogs, just really, you're helping them, but it makes you feel amazing. So it's nearly selfish in a way, I was thinking.
No, it's absolutely true. We used to do that in whether there is such a thing as an altruistic act at all, because even doing a good thing makes you feel good. It doesn't really matter what the sort of
Yeah, yeah.
drive or motivation is. You're still doing that good act. So the dogs, everyone. In fact, just before coming on to do this chat, I was looking at your video of quite a recent sort of saving you did of Phoenix and Faith. We were going to the beach for the first time, just these wee dogs going to the beach for the first time after being caged for years. Now, this is one of the more recent ones, and we'll go through a few of the stories and characters, but it's just transformative when you see them on a beach in the sea. It seems so simple for lots of dogs. We'll walk dogs on the beach, but for them, it just must be absolutely just this great emancipation.
Yeah, I think if people follow me on social media or see the dogs, like you maybe don't see how hard I give little glimpses. Like these dogs have brutal lives. Phoenix and Faith you've seen the picture obviously on
Yeah.
video. Like you can't even explain. They were barely recognizable as dogs. They were in a cage. It took us 4 or 5 hours to groom them because they were so matted. The smell of them, there was worms coming out, or like maggots coming out from the wounds. It was horrific. And then the one thing is, though, they're incredibly resilient.
Mm.
They they bounce back so quick. Even the ones who've had traumas or bad accidents or human abuse, they're just there willing to love and trust again very quickly. So yeah, we do silly things like that, like take them to the beach or, and it's, do you know what? It's as much for, I do it as much for the people who help me as well and people online. And because there's just so much bad news in the world, and there's the people who help me with the dogs. It's very tough,
Yeah.
emotional work.
And when you say, as you say, you're doing 90% of the work that you don't show on social media because people don't want to be. Like, I remember when I first came across you on social media, it was Pauline McLynn, the actress who's sort of best known for Mrs. Doyle and Father Ted. She put me onto your feed, and then so I watched, and so much of it, you just all you want to know as an animal lover is this going to selfishly you think, is this going to make me feel better about the world and about, and that's why your videos do. But you must, you see a lot of the grim stuff as well that you don't post on social media.
Yeah, well, I sort of, there was two things. When I started making the videos, it was around COVID. I think the Ukraine war had just started, and then cost of living crisis was really, like inflation and stuff was
Mm.
really bad. And I was still reading, English media, Irish media, and I was like just depressed. I was like reading it like you're sitting there and I'm like, how, like everybody is just so miserable. I was like, what can I do content wise that is maybe just a little bit happy? And dog rescue by its very nature is, not very happy. And the second thing was, as I was researching more, I started following all the charities and all the um dog rescues and all that, and the content was just so depressing. And I was like, I don't think people want this. Like,
No.
I understand if like the baby starving in Africa, or the child with, or the dog with its head sort of half cut off, it elicits a response and people donate, like it does work and that's why people do it. But I was like, maybe there's a different way to do this. Maybe I can tell the little character stories. And genuinely, ideas are formed, but this was formed over a year. But I remember watching your videos and the talking. I remember watching about three or four, five different things, and sort of, an idea comes together from different ideas. And like, yeah, it was just sort of, I don't want it to, like, I remember the first video I did was like I stood there with a dog and I was
Mm.
like up in the jungle, and I turned the camera around and I perched it on a rock or something. And I watched it back and I was like, nobody wants to see you standing there presenting, talking about dogs. So I was like, that's out the window. And then I think I might still have that one somewhere. But then I just started talking over my videos on Instagram, and people related to it because I think everybody talks to their dogs, don't
Yeah.
they? And six
Yeah.
or seven nicknames for them, and you're talking to them like a baby. And so I just shared that, and people seem to like it.
But those are the videos that I first saw of yours were the ones where, and it is that point of view of us looking at the dogs, because again, then you become every dog owner, as you say, and it's just the way we talk to the dogs and seeing their expressions and their faces and their love and reactions when you come into. So that is absolutely 100% if there is the best way of doing it, that is the best way of doing it. But it's the characters as well of the dogs. And as you mentioned, the resilience, because a lot of them are used for mistreating, whether through enforced breeding programs or just physical abuse, yet they still want to love humans.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, I'd say there's one called Whacker who
Oh
had
yeah.
a pickaxe. Like I arrived, this was early in helping the dogs, and I arrived there and he had a pickaxe driven down through. I could see into his brains when I got there.
God.
And but he just bounced back, and like uh it's like they're stupidly innocent in a way, like I sometimes look at them and they're like, God, you should be a lot angrier than you are about the situation you're in, but they're just so pure and so such wonderful creatures, as you trying to get comfy there.
I mean, this
uh,
is just circling on a beanbag, which goes on for some time, but as if it's going to make any difference. But
the street dogs do the exact same. They find a perfect little spot of cement that is the ideal temperature and circle around it.
gotta make it just so.
Yeah,
So I just want until this is over. You finished?
beautiful.
Have you finished? See, that's point that led to nothing. That's you've done a minute of circling and you haven't even laid down. Right, you carry on with that. So, well, King Wacker. and again, I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but animals that you rehost. Shushed. There we are.
There
She's
we
down.
go. Perfect.
There we go. I found the perfect spot. That
Yeah.
is exactly as I wanted it. So
That's
King
a view
Whacker's,
down, view down the hallway, everything. She can
as you can
hear you.
see, no, she's just
Yeah.
waiting for people to shout at or welcome home or whatever. So, is King Whacker, is he in the UK now? Did he?
He's in Glasgow actually. He's a big tough Glasgow head on him now, and he fits in perfectly up there.
Oh God, I don't know. No, I was going to say something that might offend people in Glasgow. I'm from Glasgow pretty much, so I can say
All
that's
right.
fine. Anyway, but it's all the characters you said from the first one. It's from Lucky and King Whacker, and I was looking at Beyonce and Britney, and yeah, the different challenges with all of them. Can you go through a few of just a few of the stories that we know so well?
Yeah, well, there's like a good one is maybe McMuffin. She was a
Oh
little beat.
yeah, God.
Um, and what happens, unfortunately, is people, if dogs get very sick, they actually just put them out on the street sometimes. And McMuffin was obviously bought as a beagle or found as a beagle, which is totally unusual as a street dog. But she'd ended up in the custody of this little old man who ended up being a little bit simple. He wasn't the full he's a little bit mentally ill, and but he was looking after her, and she had like 30 cancerous tumors all over
Mm.
her. It's a cancer called TVT, but we were able to, like, I just shared her story. I called her McMuffin because she had like a yellow and blue bandages on, so I was looking on the menu, McDonald's menu, because she looked like Ronald McDonald. I just went through all I was like nuggets and chicken burgers, and then I found McMuffin, and I was like, oh, that's a perfect name. And so it's at the end of the day, that's like a really sad story, like horrific. She was, hours from death, but because it kind of shared it in a positive way, gave her a
Mm.
nice name. People who are cancer survivors themselves sort of donated and helped her medical, because her medical bills ended up in 3 or 4 grand, but everybody chipped in for her, and then she survived, and she became like she's on the cover of the hardback actually, and she ended up going to Germany, and she has a wonderful life there now. So it's I think people see a little bit of themselves, like in some of the dogs. There might be one who's abused. So there's I've certainly had messages from people who've told me that they suffer from that, and they get great strength from the dogs, or cancer survivors, or yeah. So they're little characters, but they give us all a bit of hope, I think.
Well, and there's two things from the McMuffin story. There's her optimism because she is the relentless optimist that things will get better, and for her they have. But there's also, as you mentioned, the guy who was trying his best to look after her, and he had his own challenges and mental difficulties. And then when you showed him how she was doing, it just brought such joy to him. So there's a bit of human optimism as well.
There is, yeah, and look, I think that's what I only through the lens of dogs, I would say, is I've seen these unbelievable sides of people that
Mm.
like just how much people are willing to sacrifice. I'm not talking about financially, but like, give up their time, or go to unbelievable, sit with dogs all night, or like they really do bring out the best in people. And I think that's great. They're just I don't know. I'm an atheist myself, but they're like whatever God or whoever created dogs is really put them here for a reason to make us all a bit happier, because they're just the most incredible creatures.
It's great. This is two misanthropic atheists talking to each other about their love for dogs, and the fact that through that prism you can see the goodness of people as well. Because it's again, through two very different dog cases, I've seen so much of goodness and love coming back, and actually positivity. So it's an interesting thing, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I've seen the online world in a different way, because much of it is terrible, awful,
Yeah.
but then you actually see that it can be such a good force as well.
But I really think we're blessed in that we publish content about dogs, because I think I would have given up I had given up social
Mm,
media before I started this, because it was just too negative and it's just nothing to get back there. Like I would have followed football. So, I like
yeah.
to follow the football journalists on Twitter because they might have some insights and stuff. But then you get bombarded with all this negativity and hate, and it's really not a very positive place to spend time. But through the lens of dogs, like I I don't even get one bad comment. I don't think, you might get somebody. The only thing that might even annoy me is I might get 50 bits of medical advice for one dog, but and it's off the wall sort of stuff, but it's coming from a very good place full of love.
Yeah.
People are trying to help. So it's no, dogs just make everything better, really.
Yeah, well, sports broadcasters get the occasional bit of criticism as well. So I just try and not look at social media during. This will
Yeah.
be going out during Wimbledon, so I just switch it off, or I just say, like, you can be here for the dogs, but I suppose you've got to take you've got to take, that's the way social media works. You've got to take the good and the bad. But you will have seen that almost overwhelmingly it's good stuff with dogs.
It really is. And I think people just, I don't know what it is about dogs, but they just respond in such a positive way that, um, yeah, they're just innocent creatures and that feeds through.
Sometimes you can't save the dogs, and there are stories in there that I was crying. Just like anybody who reads the book, there are a couple of stories. Tyson, you can't save all the dogs, but what you can do is, I love the fact that you're able to give them in just their final few weeks. It might be just a feeling of happiness, and holding Tyson's paw as he slips away. That his last moments will be in a place of love.
Yeah, that's not enjoyable. That's the wrong word, but they're the most fulfilling.
Mm.
Like obviously when you rescue a little puppy and you say it's in a bad way and you turn it around, that's great because it's got a great life. But also you look at these dogs like Tyson who were just old, they've had a tough life, and then I bring them in, and like my house is kind of like a little hospice at the moment. If they're at the very end of their days and that the gig is up, I like to give them a few. Some people might just take them straight and away and get them
Yeah,
euthanized, but like I like to just give them a wash, get them a space on the sofa, maybe get them a steak. Tyson was a bit too sick for that. We were sort of just trying to keep him alive, but it's nice to just give them a nice send off. Like they're very social creatures. They maybe haven't had a lot of human contact or love in their lives. So I know from just interacting with them that those last few days mean the world to them. So I just feel like it gives them a bit of dignity to leave this world in a better place.
yeah. It's very strange, but I can, as you say, that must be the most fulfilling for them, almost to know that all the sort of times of struggle, were leading to something a little bit better, even if it was just the very end times. It's extraordinarily powerful.
But it also, like, I'm not gonna lie, like when that happens, it's mentally it drains you. Like it's not like, we've all lost a pet probably, and it's very, very tough.
Mm,
But even I might only know them for 2 or 3 weeks, but it nearly feels just as tough. Like, I mean, it's another creature dying that's in your care, or your
yeah.
very, like, when that happens, I'm pretty good with depression now and anxiety. I'm kind of can manage it really well, and it's a lot less with alcohol. But when you lose a dog, I still have a bad day afterwards. It's just a monumentally tough emotional thing to take on.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and not just, I mean, you had Snoop was your savior in a way, and I love the pictures in the book of you swimming with Snoop, or just holding him in the water as he's paddling away. And like, so it's just, I don't know, the connection that we all have with our dogs is something you will experience tenfold with so many different dogs.
Yeah, well, I had all these sort of very sick dogs coming and going, and I think any other dog might have been put out or like annoyed that who the hell are, I've been here in all the dark times and I want to enjoy my retirement with you, and you're bringing in all these, young kids. But he just welcomed them all in and was a quiet, gentle soul. So he no, he had a wonderful life, and he passed away. But it's never easy when they're like his legs were gone at the end and
Yeah.
he was incontinent and stuff. But you just have to give them a bit of dignity, I think,
Yeah. How does it work for you now? Because you mentioned you're in New York, and it's become, for want of a better description, a business, a big business, and that's the way it should be. It's about, as you mentioned right at the start of this conversation, it's not about feeding, it's about medical care, it's about sterilization. It's probably about, almost bigger than that, trying to educate people for whom dogs are seen as wild, feral creatures into something else.
Yeah, well, there's 500 million street dogs in the world, and my lifetime's ambition is to half that. So it's save 250 million dogs, which is bonkers. But I sometimes like my ideal. day is just driving around on the moped, feeding dogs. And if I was really selfish, that's what I would do. But I've been given this lucky chance to, a big platform, and people are interested in it. So I feel like I, I couldn't, like, New York's fine. I've had some nice pizza and I've had some nice, looked at a couple of things, but I cannot wait to get back to the dogs and the jungle and just get back to what I love doing the most. So I'm trying to build the life in a way that, yeah, I need to build out the organization globally and stuff, but like, my office is in a shipping container on the land. I can look at all the dogs literally in front of me. So I can begrudgingly look at spreadsheets and maybe do media interviews or things that I don't like doing, but I'm doing them kind of on my terms with surrounded by dogs. So that's yeah, I don't love all that side of things, but I know that to save a lot of dogs, I have to do that.
How many dogs do you have on site with you? You mentioned the shipping container and you've got a piece of land, and what sort of setup is it? How big is the land, and how many dogs are you sort of looking after at one time?
Well, there's a lot of shelters around the world, and what they tend to do is they get big and they just take in every dog that comes along, and they end up with 300 or 400 dogs, and it doesn't fix anything. It's great for those 300 or 400 dogs. They have a safe place. But my philosophy is more, we only have 15 or 16 at any one time.
Hmm.
They're very serious cases, and we rehome them or we find good medical solutions for them. But we feed 800 on the streets every single day, and then we sterilize. And by feeding them, I mean we cook the food, and we have a lovely recipe with fresh ingredients like vegetables and stuff in it.
Don't
And
I saw
then
the bangers and mash day though? That's something very yeah, that was
we do little treat days like that, bangers and mash. What else did we do for them? We did them a roast dinner one time
oh
for
God.
100 dogs. But that's just a bit of, like I said, that's more for the people I work with. It's like they love doing things like that because it's very easy to get dragged into, sick dogs all day, every day. You need to remember why you do it as well and have a bit of fun.
Yeah, and the view of dogs by humans in Thailand, the people must see you, as you said, you don't want to be known as the crazy dog guy, but I mean, they would have thought, why is this guy helping these, not vermin, but I mean, it's just they're just seen as they're not viewed in the same way that we view dogs, put it that way.
Yeah, it's also very just a different culture. Like there's a younger, more middle class, affluent sort of person coming through in a lot of Southeast Asia, and they love dogs, and they're becoming trendy, and that's good. But there's an older generation which are poorer, and might
Mm.
be rural farmers, and if you've got six stray dogs coming along eating your chickens, or like tearing up your rubbish, like you're not going to love that, so it's just the way. So that's when they might take out a machete or something and something bad happens. But it's it's educating that is a key part of it.
Yeah, but I mean, you seem very aware that cruelty to animals, sometimes unwitting cruelty to animals, it comes from humans often who are having their own struggles.
Definitely, yeah, taking it out on the animals. But it's also, I think people think that it's just Thailand. Like I visited three shelters here yesterday in New York, and like they're overflowing, and
Hmm.
they're kill shelters where they have to euthanize dogs because there's too many. So it's not just I think it's more sanitized in the West. There definitely is dog issues all over the world, but we'll try and fix them.
See, I don't know what your approach to social media is because it's difficult to, you can't probably engage in it too much because I don't know what your algorithm would be like, but I would imagine it would be just feeding you dogs or dog content. And there's a funny
Yeah.
thing about dog content in that, your dog content is very different, very real, but a lot of it is creating a sort of cartoonish version of dogs and will probably attract people to get dogs because they think, look at this cute creature without realizing the work that's involved in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, I kind of just stay out of any discourse. Maybe I should in the future but there's a lot of, like, the shelters that I was visiting yesterday is like people asking for my opinion on it and what's the solution. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But can I go in there, highlight a couple of dogs and get them homes? Yes. And does that change the world for all the dogs? Not necessarily. But those two dogs, like when we rehome a dog, like there's two dogs have just arrived, one in Edinburgh, one in London in the last 24 hours. And seeing them, like I saw where they used to live on the streets. One of them got burnt down her leg,
Oh, I
Eve.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's just arrived in England and she's already sitting up on the sofa watching TV, being hand fed treats. So that just for me is like it's like winning the lottery every time.
But you must have to really vet the prospective owners and say, right, are you aware of everything that has to be done to because some people will see your content again and think, oh, I'd love to help that dog continue its journey and might not be, with the best will in the world, might not be the best owners potentially.
Or even we just have to be careful with things like they might want the dog for a bigger social media following,
Yeah.
or there's a lot of things to consider. But we do a lot of interviews. It's yeah, it's important to find them the right homes.
I'm glad you said that actually about a lot of people will want dogs possibly for a bigger social media following because that is another of our human failings is hey, we just need the love as much as the dogs do, but we need it through social media apparently now. So what are your next plans? You mentioned your end goals. How do you see the next year or years going?
Um, I know it just keeps getting bigger. Like I just ride in the wave of like yeah, it's like my dreams are just coming true because at the end of the day, I wake up every morning and like I haven't had a day off or anything in 2 or 3 years, but it's not in any way like work. I get up every morning and I can work with dogs and try and help dogs. And I think that's the dream of, millions of people around the world. So I'm blessed with that. And my mental health is good. So those are the two, like I'll talk about other things in a second, but like get to work with dogs every day and my mental health is good. Nothing else matters. Like that,
Yeah.
those are the two things that are good. We're building a hospital. We're sterilizing dogs. We're going to try and get to 10,000 dogs a month by the end of the year. So we're just really scaling things and trying to get into really boring things like legislation
Mm.
and changing things at scale like that, maybe like licenses and all that sort of stuff. But that's the if I could have my way, like I said, I'd be on the moped every day feeding the dogs.
There we go. How many dogs do you have in your own home? Because occasionally you would say, right, okay, we can't find a home for this dog, or there's just no way to put it back on the street or whatever. So you have occasionally taken dogs in yourself.
Yeah, at the moment, well, I had a really bad run at the end of last year where four dogs died. I had Snoop, my own dog, so I had
Yeah.
him for a long time. Tina, who was an amazing
Oh,
dog, who
yeah.
we rescued from a chain, and she ended up blossoming, but then she got kidney failure, so she only lived 6 months. I had Jumbo, who was another street dog I'd taken in, and I had Derek. They were all sort of end of life cases, but the four of them died within about 4 or 5 months. So that was incredibly hard. So I was like, just take a
Mm.
step back. So I only have Hank at the moment, Hank the Tank, and then he's like my place is like the hospice. So like the shelter with medical stuff and everything there. But if there's a dog that only has a week left, or if he needs just complete rest and air conditioning or anything, he or she will come to my house. So it's a
Yeah.
revolving door sort of hospice type place.
So is there one story you mentioned, McMuffin? Is there any story? I actually mentioned Tina there. Would Tina be your favorite or one of your favorite?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
because she was
yeah.
such a beautiful and sort of, again, relentlessly cheery dog despite everything that had happened to her.
Yeah, she just even thinking of her, I get emotional. She was just unbelievable. And it really translated it onto people's phones and stuff as well. Like she changed people's lives around the world, which sounds ridiculous and it sounds like something like a little soundbite, you'd say, but she really did. Like people just adored her. She was just an incredible soul. She was on a chain for her whole life. The picture, if you see of her, is just like skin and bones, death. And she came back, and she only had 6 months, but we took her to the beach. She blossomed, and up until like the last, like she died in my arms. We were just listening to, I think something corny like Elton John or something. It was just really nice music, and the sun was out, and it was. She was just a. She only had 6 months, but it was the best 6 months ever, and it's like any dog who dies. I would do anything to just have another hour with
Yeah,
her.
yeah, God. Uh, yeah, but again, that's the message we've touched upon throughout this chat, and it's certainly the message that is conveyed in the book, is that these dogs, who are the characters, the real sort of main characters of the book. Every one of them has a different story, but the common theme seems to be one of resilience and hope, as the book is called, but that things can get better. And that's why I think people do identify with the dogs and say, look, if they're willing to put everything nasty that's put behind them or forget about their current circumstances and look forward with hope, then perhaps I can do that as well. So there's something for people to attach to.
Yeah, and even I think just my own personal, like I'm very open with mental health and stuff like that. And I think if you the amount of people, like I used to have my own company, so that people coming to me with their problems, which I wouldn't share, like personal problems. If people knew how many people were on like antidepressants, on Xanax, on
Mm.
Valium, on drinking wine every evening, of grief, mental health, like eating disorders, like it's pretty much, I would say, 50% of people have some they're hiding some sort of problem, and it's we're all battling at life. It's not an easy thing to get through. So I just try and share that openly and tell people, because if you go onto Instagram, I would say especially, and if anybody has kids, it's phenomenally dangerous. It's just this perfect life that everybody has that's filtered, and everything is ideal, and that's not real life. Like
No.
we're all just chipping away and trying to get through the next day. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not so good. But the dogs show that you can come back.
Yeah, see, that's the great thing about your accounts is that there is a realism to it as well. And sometimes I feel a little bit not guilty, but in terms of buying into the social media thing of, I'll show myself up a mountain with the dogs on a perfect day or such, and people say, what a wonderful, perfect life you have. Nobody has a perfect life. But the danger of social media is that it's selling that idea that everybody does, which I do think is a wee bit dangerous.
Well, the lucky thing is I'm like on an island in Thailand, and I've nobody to answer to. If somebody wanted me to do, I don't know, interviewers, I can just say no. Or if somebody wants me to work or whatever, I'll just say no. Whereas everybody else who has maybe mental health and other issues, maybe have a boss, have somebody to answer to, has a family they're scared to share it with, or it's very hard to talk about. So if I can talk about it and show that I've got lots of followers or whatever, and I still struggle with it, I think that's can only help people, hopefully.
Yeah, well, anyway, listen, you've saved a lot of dogs, but again, the message is I think the dogs will save us as human beings as well. That was quite a grand way to finish, but listen, I'm hoping there are many more Derricks and Rodneys and McMuffins and King Whackers and Marlon Brando. I didn't even talk about Marlon Brando. I loved just this
He's a great
dignified
dog.
older dog.
Yeah, he used to clean his eyes every morning. That was his. He used to come down to get his eyes cleaned because they were sort of, he had pus and everything in them, and
Yeah,
he cleaned them himself, obviously. But yeah, he got hit by a car, which was very sad. But my happiest thing with him was he got to taste the lovely new food that we made, a recipe and everything. So his last week he was eating beautiful food, and the sun was on his back, and he was with his friends. So it's not, you always have to find the positive
yeah.
angle on it.
Who knew that that's where catering college would lead to in the
Yeah,
end? Anyway, I know you've got a lot more work to do, and you're looking forward to doing it all as well. I'm glad you've sort of found your calling in life. Just a reminder again, if you haven't got the book, I'm sure you have got the book, but it's out in paperback. Buy it for some other people as well, who might be dog lovers, but they don't have to be dog lovers to read it and to understand the message within it. So there we are. Hope by Niall Harbison. Niall, thank you very much indeed for joining us from New York. What a glamorous life you lead, but get back to Thailand and get out on your moped soon.
well, it can't be that good of an interview because the dog is fast asleep. So
She is. She's just about upside down now with no, she can't
totally
hear it.
switched off.
If she knew I was talking to Niall Harbison, she'd be very, very engaged. Mabel's disappeared though. I don't know where she's
Yeah,
hiding somewhere. Anyway, thank you very much, Niall. Thank you to everyone for watching. Niall Harbison, ladies and gentlemen. Niall, all the best to you.
thank you.